Robin Roberts. A name spoken with admiration across America, but behind that name is a story that many think they understand, yet few have truly felt. Let me take you into the life she lived long before the lights of the Good Morning America studio ever struck her face. A life shaped not by fame, but by battles so heavy they would have crushed almost anyone else. Because Robin didn't just sit at a news desk, she carried her own breaking news inside her body, day after day, year after year, while millions watched and never knew the full truth. Robin fought breast cancer with a strength most people only read about, but the world never saw those nights when she lay awake wondering if the next sunrise would still belong to her. They didn't hear the quiet prayers she whispered in the dark, or see the way her hands trembled the first time she told her family her diagnosis. And just when it seemed like she had beaten the unthinkable, life struck again with a diagnosis so rare and so devastating that even Robin struggled to speak its name. Myelodysplastic syndrome, a bone marrow disease that didn't just threaten her career, it threatened her life. Imagine being told that your only chance of survival rests in someone else's cells, someone else's sacrifice, someone else's courage. The treatments were brutal, the exhaustion unimaginable. There were moments Robin wondered if she could keep smiling for America when her own spirit felt too heavy to lift. But she did. She showed up when her body begged her to stop. She laughed when she was in pain. She held her head high when fear tried to break her. And through every needle, every transfusion, every moment that pushed her to the edge, she continued to be a light for others, even when her own world felt dark. Her sister gave her the gift of life, a bone marrow transplant that carried both hope and heartbreak, because it forced Robin to confront the fragility of everything she had built. And while her doctors fought to keep her alive, her family fought to keep her spirits from collapsing under the weight of uncertainty. They were the ones who watched her sleep through entire afternoons because her energy was gone, who held her hand through storms the public never saw, who stood beside her when she lost her hair, her strength, and her sense of what tomorrow might hold. Yet Robin kept rising. She kept returning to the studio, her voice steady even when her knees weren't, her smile bright even when her body dimmed. She carried America through news stories while silently carrying her own, proving that true courage isn't loud, it's quiet, patient, and relentless. At 65, she stands as a symbol of survival, of grace under fire, of what it means to choose life even when life has not chosen to be kind. Her tragedy isn't just in what she endured, it's in what she hid, so others wouldn't worry, in the pain she tucked behind her professionalism, in the weight she bore so she could continue being a source of hope for millions. The world celebrates her victories, but rarely acknowledges the cost she paid to achieve them. The strength it took to walk back onto a set when her bones ached. The bravery it took to speak when her breath was thin. The faith it took to keep believing her story wasn't over. And that is why her journey moves us so deeply. Because Robin Roberts didn't just survive, she taught us what survival looks like in its rawest form. Painful, frightening, uncertain, and breathtakingly brave. A reminder that even the strongest souls are shaped by battles the world will never see. And that is why her story at 65 is not just inspiring. It is heartbreaking in ways most can't imagine. This is the truth behind her strength, the quiet war she fought, and the legacy she continues to build every single day. At 65, The tragedy of Robin Roberts is beyond heartbreaking. You have to understand something that most people never fully grasp. Survival isn't a single moment. It isn't a victory you reach and then rest on. It's a constant, daily decision to keep moving forward even when your body and mind are begging you to stop. And for Robin, especially after everything she endured, the years that followed were not a gentle return to normal, but a long, fragile road filled with quiet battles that the world never saw. Because while TV viewers celebrated her return, applauded her courage, and believed she had conquered every mountain, Robin was still learning how to live inside a body that had been broken down and rebuilt. A body forever changed by chemotherapy, bone marrow transplants, and nights spent wondering if her breath would steady or fade, and she carried that new reality with grace, never letting the world see the fear that sometimes gripped her before dawn when she woke up aching, or the worry that flashed through her mind every time she went for checkups, hoping the doctors wouldn't find something she wasn't ready to face again. Because once you've been told your life is hanging in the balance, the memory of that moment never leaves you. And for Robin, it reshaped everything. How she worked, how she loved, how she cherished the smallest details of living, like sunlight on a quiet morning, or the sound of laughter in her home. Things she once overlooked now became treasures she held tightly, and her faith grew deeper, not because she was unbreakable, but because she knew she had been broken and somehow survived. And even as she regained her strength, even as she stepped back onto the Good Morning America set with that radiant smile the world adored, there were days she had to push herself to speak. Days when her energy faded by mid-morning. Days when she looked into the mirror and wondered how long she could keep giving the world everything it expected from her when she herself was still healing. And yet she kept going, not out of obligation, but out of purpose. Out of the understanding that her survival meant something, that her voice could save others, that in sharing her journey, she was holding the hand of someone out there who felt alone in their own battle. And behind the cameras, behind the applause, behind the perfectly lit interviews, Robin faced the emotional heaviness that comes after trauma. Moments where her body was fine, but her spirit felt exhausted. Memories of hospital rooms and whispered conversations about life expectancy resurfacing when she least expected them. And she learned to carry that weight with honesty, never pretending she was invincible, but embracing the truth that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about rebuilding yourself every time you fall apart. And her family, the same people who stood beside her through cancer, through MDS, through the unbearable waiting for bone marrow results, continued to be her anchor, offering quiet reassurance on the days she hid her fears behind a camera-ready smile, reminding her that she wasn't alone, that healing didn't have a deadline, and that her worth was not measured by how flawlessly she performed on television, but by how deeply she lived the life she fought so hard to keep. And as the years passed, and Robin carried her story into advocacy, into speaking for patients who didn't have a public voice, into shining light on bone marrow donation and raising awareness for diseases people rarely talked about, she found new meaning in the suffering she endured, realizing that her pain had carved out a place in her heart that made her more compassionate, more connected, more aware of the battles hidden behind other people's smiles, and she poured that empathy into every word she spoke, every life she touched. Because at 65, Robin Roberts wasn't just a survivor. She was a testament to resilience, to the truth that overcoming illness is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new one shaped by gratitude, vulnerability, and the courage to keep living fully even when fear whispers in the background. And the tragedy in her story isn't only the diseases she faced, but the cost of carrying hope while silently managing the lingering shadows those battles left behind, the fatigue that came without warning, the emotional scars that healing never fully erased, and the constant awareness that life is fragile, precious, unpredictable. But what makes Robin's story so profoundly inspiring is that she never let those shadows define her. Instead, she used them to illuminate the lives of others, turning her suffering into a beacon of strength, teaching millions that even in the darkest moments, there is a reason to hold on. And that is why her journey at 65 is heartbreaking. Not because she was defeated, but because she fought battles most people never saw, battles that would have broken many, yet she continued to stand, to smile, to uplift, to live with a depth of gratitude only someone who has faced the edge of life can truly understand, reminding all of us that pain and purpose often walk hand in hand, and that behind every triumph is a story of survival etched in invisible wounds. And even as the world continued to celebrate Robin's strength, what most people never realized was that healing didn't mean her fears disappeared. It only meant she learned how to live with them, how to wake up every morning unsure of what her body might feel like, yet still choose gratitude, still choose purpose, still choose hope. And on the days when her energy faded faster than she expected, when memories of hospital beds and whispered diagnoses crept into her thoughts, she reminded herself that surviving wasn't about being fearless, but about refusing to let fear decide her future. And she leaned on the love around her, the quiet support that held her together when her spirit felt heavy. And with every step forward, she carried the truth that her journey wasn't just her own. It belonged to every person fighting their own hidden battle, every soul searching for proof that strength can rise from suffering.